What marital moment during lockdown convinced Sally Hepworth to write a murderous love story?
Yeah, I mean, he's alive. We're still happily married.
In this video, hear the story behind her New York Times bestseller, The Soulmate. It's Angie from HEC Books, where authors take us beyond the pages of their bestsellers and into their writing world. If this is your first time here, click the subscribe button. Now, here's the hilariously authentic Sally Hepworth. Don't miss the end when Sally talks about the many soulmates in her life.
You know, when you talk to friends and you say, oh, I just started this book and it's a slow start, but I'm getting there, I'm getting into it. It's just taking me a few chapters to really get into it. That is not your book. That is not your book, because Sally, you jump in the first chapter, someone had fallen off a cliff by page 8. 8. And that's why I love you.
I know, but we don't have time to waste. Like, we're mostly women in here, right? Like, majority, we're busy. We want to be excited really fast, like in all facets of life, I'm just saying. And we don't have a lot of time. And I am a woman too, so I want to deliver in that way for you all because, I mean, we do a lot. Life's hard. No waiting.
Yeah. So let's talk about The Soulmate.
Yes.
What's your description of it? Just a short description.
I'll tell you about it. So for those who have read any of my previous novels, you'll know that I love to write about family dysfunctionality. And so with The Soulmate, I decided to write about the most dysfunctional of all relationships, and that is marriage. So in The Soulmate, we look at 2 marriages. There is Gabe and Pippa, who are in their 30s, they're married, they have 2 little girls, and they live on a cottage that's on a cliff with these amazing views, but it's also a place where people go to take their own lives. They manage to turn this around though, and Gabe, who lives there, manages to make his life's work out of talking the people down from that cliff. And in the year that they've lived there, 7 people have come to the cliff and all 7 have walked away because of Gabe. And at the beginning of the book, an 8th person comes to the cliff, a woman, and he goes out to her, and his wife Pippa is watching through the window, and she notices that he's acting a little bit different. He's gone a little bit closer than he normally would, and his arms are kind of flailing around a little bit. And she looks away for a moment to one of her children, and when she looks back, the woman's gone over the cliff, and Gabe's hands are just at a slightly odd angle that looks a little bit like he may have pushed her. So that's the first marriage. And then the second marriage is the marriage of Amanda, who has just gone over the cliff. At the beginning of the book, she's dead, and we look back at her marriage through flashbacks, but also posthumously. So that was a really interesting way of looking at the idea of marriage and these 2 very different marriages. One which was, romance and it's got this gorgeous meet cute and this passionate fiery love, and the other is kind of at the opposite spectrum of love and kind of a slow burn. And it was really interesting to investigate marriage and all of those questions that we have about marriage, but around this delightfully murderous kind of backdrop.
So the last time you were here, you were talking about The Younger Wife, which you also wrote in lockdown along with this book. And you talked about, how you got this idea for a murderous love story. But I don't think we heard the moment when you realized I've got to write this book that involved Christian, right? Mr. Sally Hepworth.
I mean, yeah. It's no surprise that there was a marital moment that sparked this book. And for us, we were in lockdown in Melbourne, which was the longest lockdown in the world. I mean, terrible, but also, let's claim it, right? If something's going to be bad, we win. So, and you can imagine, you've been at home all day with your husband because he's homesick or something and he's really annoying you. So imagine it's been that for 4 months. Plus your kids are all stuck there and you can't leave the house. So against that background, it was a normal day. I've got 2 kids who are in elementary school getting ready for their home learning. Both of them have lost their passwords, of course. And one of them had a project due that I'd never heard about. And my 3-year-old was getting out her permanent markers to start drawing on the walls because that was what she did every day during lockdown. And Christian was nowhere to be seen. And this was a thing that he would do every day at 10 to 9. He would mysteriously disappear, and then I'd find him, mowing the lawn or like cutting a branch off a tree, like way in the back of the yard that urgently needed doing, or talking to the postman. And this day I had a meeting at 9 o'clock. And so I was not having it, and I went room to room, and there's not that many rooms, right, looking for him, and I couldn't find him. And finally I opened the garage on a whim because I thought, we're not allowed to go anywhere, Why would he be in the garage? And the car was not in the garage, but Christian was. And he had his golf clubs out, and he'd set up a video camera, a little bit like this one, and he was videoing himself practicing his golf swing so he could then superimpose it over a video of Tiger Woods swinging his golf clubs and measure the angles. And he thought this would be a great thing to do at 10 to 9 in the morning. So that was the moment that I decided to write about marriage and murder.
Better to write about it than something else.
I mean, but what was so... Yeah, I mean, he's alive. We're still happily married. But I walked away from that, and I think this is the piece and I thought, I have to write this book. But I wanted to stress test it because you never know, maybe I'm just, I've gone mad with the lockdown. And so I went into my WhatsApp group, which is my oldest girlfriends, who also have got kids and jobs, and, it's very unlikely to get them all responding to me at 10 to 9 on a, weekday. But I just quickly thumbed in, is anyone fantasising about murdering their husbands? And within 2 seconds, all of them are there. And not only were they fantasising about murdering their husbands, but they knew exactly how they were going to do it and what they had done to deserve it. And we changed the WhatsApp to husband killers, and it's still called that to this day. And so I thanked those girls in the acknowledgements. All marriages survive, all husbands survive. And I think I did say no husbands were harmed.
Back to Mr. Sally Hepworth. We're talking about soulmates. Is Christian your soulmate? Do you believe in soulmates?
I've thought a lot about soulmates for this book. And I think that what I've done is I've made the word soulmate a bit more complex in my mind. I think insofar as there being one person for every person, which I think is the kind of traditional way we look at soulmates. No, I don't believe that. I think that there's more than one person for people. And I mean, we see that. Sometimes there are people who've been married once and lost a partner and found someone else. I think so much of what makes a marriage special is what you put into it rather than that kind of moment. That said, I start to see soulmates in so many other assets or other parts of our lives than just romance. Like, I recently was away with my oldest girlfriend, the husband killers. Right. And I was like, well, these girls are my soulmates. We've spent our lives together from when we were children through before the men, before the babies, before the, aging parents. And then when we're the aging parents, I hope we'll be together. And what is more of a soulmate than that? Christian is my soulmate because of the time we've spent together and the life that we've had rather than any kind of magic cosmic moment. Yeah, I mean, I'm now serious about it, but there is, and with my books, I love humour and I love murder, but I also love to ponder those kind of deeper issues, because this is the stuff that we think about and wonder about. And yeah, I think soulmate can kind of undercut what some of these relationships are by reducing it to a moment instead of it being something that we build with people.
So I read that The Soulmate is one of your favorite books that you've written. Is Is that true?
Yes, that is true.
So I've also read it had the fewest amount of edits. And so is that why it's your favorite, or why is it your favorite?
I don't know why, and I wish I knew, because, and it is my favourite in that, yes, it came out very easily and very quickly. I did write it in lockdown, which is probably why I wrote it quickly, because I had nothing else to do, and a very clear idea of who was going to die. But no, look, I don't know. I wish I knew. And the more books I write and the more authors I speak to, and really successful, authors that I admire so much, we're all saying to each other, how do you do it? What makes it easier? We're obsessed with this idea that there is a right way. And I think it's just part of the magic of the books. And some of them come easily and some of them come, not so easily. I've had books that have been really hard to get out of me that have been very successful. And then this one, well, I hope it'll be successful. but it was a real joy to write. But ultimately the joy for me isn't about one particular story. It's about storytelling. And I can find that joy in any book, really.
I heard the last book that you felt this way about was The Mother-in-Law. Is that right?
Yeah.
So speaking of The Mother-in-Law, we know that it's being made into a TV series with Amy Poehler at the helm of that. And then you have some other news as far as things hitting the big screen and small screen, right?
Yeah. Well, there's some that I can't quite announce yet, but there are things happening with almost every one of my books at the moment, little bits of interest that are kind of tracking along. So at the beginning of last year, Amazon asked me via my agent if I would write a short story for them. It's a really cool concept. I don't know if you guys read them. It's called Amazon Original Stories. And what they asked me to do was be part of a summer series where there's 5 authors and they give you the same prompt, which I think is such a fun idea. And you all obviously write quite a different story. So I did that one. The prompt was, it was a long prompt, but it was called The Getaway, was the series. And I remember getting the offer and thinking, oh, that's nice. They want me to write a short story. Yes, of course I'll do it, I said. And then I hung up and I Googled how to write a short story. And it's actually it's quite different to writing a novel, and I found it really challenging. But it did really well as part of this series, and it's been optioned by Blossom Films, which is Nicole Kidman's production company. So she wants to extend that and make it into a series, which is really fun. And The Good Sister has been optioned as well for TV series. And I think that's all I'm allowed to talk about.
That's all that you can talk about?
I think it is,
okay.
Yeah. Oh no, and The Family Next Door. Yes, that one's allowed.
I was like, I didn't want to say it, but I thought I could, but I didn't know.
The Family Next Door has been optioned and will be a TV series, and that one actually is the furthest along.
Oh, so, it is?
Yeah, which is fun. But for everyone, the word option really describes that first bite. It means that a production company is interested in making something and they're taking that away from anyone else. You say, yes, you can have a go at making it, and taking it off the table for anyone else. So then scripts are written, sometimes actors and actresses are attached, but it's a long process. So it's good having a few irons in the fire.
Thanks for watching. Click on part 3 of this interview to see Sally talk about how she gets into the psyche of her endearing characters.